I have Steele Barcomb with me today. He is the Director of Business Development at Intrinio. Thanks for coming to the podcast, Steele.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you having me today.
Yeah, our pleasure. Why don't you just tell our audience a little bit about who you are, how you came to work at Intrinio?
Because I always was just really enjoyed the problems that you face within the financial world. I mean, if you think about everything from a fundamental basis, everybody and anything you do is really focused around the financials of whether you're lending, whether you're doing your internal accounting, or even from an investment standpoint. And so I actually started out as doing that, and then fast forward a few years later, I actually started my own prop trading firm with a few other traders, and was a active trader. We traded equities, options, futures contracts for about 7 years, and then after doing that and kind of going through the whole gauntlet of being a trader and learning how you can develop gray hairs at an early age, I decided that I'd go back to business school, get an MBA, and focus on finance, and kind of really develop myself on more of the on the actual business development side of things. And I took a couple classes there, and obviously Fintech at the time was kind of a new and kind of growing sector within finance. And I did a project that had to do with Business Insider or Harvard Business School, and we did a couple of their journals on a few companies, and I was just like, wow. And one of them was PayPal, and just how revolutionary they kind of came up with a whole new concept of how payment processing worked. And I was like, wow, this is really cool and a really cool space. And so I just thought Intrinio's got some pretty cool stuff going on. And so fast forward 3 years later, I'm here and selling data.
Yeah. So you've got business experience, trading experience, investing experience, and you just wanted to be in this space. Now you're sitting here after a few years of business development. And I think that's a topic or a title that is very confusing. It's not like, I'm a software developer or I'm a marketer. I can understand what your job would be and what you're trying to accomplish. So how do you think about business development? And more specifically, business development in a data industry? What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's funny. Business development is just one of those such a generalized term that it could mean almost anything within a business, right? At any given point in time, regardless of the industry you're in, business development is everything. You're always trying to generate more business, right? If you're not generating more business, you're not doing, you're not growing as a company. So the title has always been kind of just go out and generate business, right? Business development. And so that could be sales, that can be, strategic partnerships, just kind of how do you navigate that specific industry to make more relationships and make more money for your firm. So, from our perspective, the financial data world can be, pretty confusing. There's a lot of integral, parts. There's a lot of bigger vendors, smaller vendors. Everybody kind of works together at the same time, competes together against each other. So, from our point of view, business development is really about focusing on what we can do to generate more exposure for the Intrinio market or our Intrinio products. And strategic partnerships, working with other vendors, other people that maybe specialize in data that complements what we do is really important, and getting exposure to other user bases. There's always, companies are always looking for the new and cutting edge data quality or alternative data sets. So it's important to not only want to stay in the space and see what everybody else is working on, but also, having those partnerships and being able to cross sell within the industry is really important. And so, we've been able to, use that kind of business development department to go out and find other companies to work with. And that's kind of what, the primary responsibilities of the BD department is just really going out and understanding, one, what are some of the, ways we can get exposure to our products outside of our traditional marketing, our marketing initiatives or our marketing strategies. And then two, developing relationships with other firms to, create more value for not only the end user, but obviously generate business for both.
I see. So it's like a whole nother channel of places where you can find customers, but you find them through your partners. What is that like? If you're doing business development, you're signing partnership agreements, and you're working with other companies. They're introducing you to clients. Maybe you're introducing them to clients. What's that experience like for the clients? Like if you're an Intrinio client, and Intrinio has these business development relationships, or a partner has a client and they're interested in Intrinio, find them through that partnership. How do the customers experience that? Is it a positive thing for them? Does it make their lives easier, or is it just kind of like a confused model for them?
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's interesting because a lot of the players in the space, unless you really are integrated and really even worked with like the data partner or data providers out there, it's a really tough space to navigate. You just, everybody kind of, there's a lot of competing products. You're not sure who, is the best person to talk to, or, what companies are able to provide the right solution for you. And so it can be pretty daunting if you're kind of a newcomer in this space, regardless if you're working for a larger firm or maybe you're just, you started a new firm. And so everybody's like, the main question I always get asked is like, can you help me, find this data? Or like, we really don't want to be working with 25 different people and navigating and negotiating all these contracts, really just looking for a centralized location, somebody to like help us navigate the space. And so that extra value add that we provide, it's like we know the right people to talk to, we know the right people to get the right data that you need, but also, the best data quality out there. Let us help you and navigate that space by, making those introductions, facilitating the sales process for you. And even at some points, like let's do the billing, we can help you with, centralizing your billing, which can be really important, especially when you have multiple different data sets that you're working with. And so a lot of times the customer, the feedback is very positive. They're always looking to work with people who understand the space better and can obviously, simplify the process. At the end of the day, it's always about how do you streamline anything and make it, more seamless for everybody, for your firm to use. Obviously time is a big factor, right? So everybody, kind of always appreciate it, especially if you can put them in touch with the right people to get them exactly what they need at the right time.
I see. So like if you're working with a company that doesn't have a business development department, you're just talking to that company. It's very limited. And then as the data buyer, you're going to have to go talk to every company individually. It's very time consuming. But if those companies have relationships and know who each other are and their strengths and weaknesses, do you think that by having that business development function, it actually saves the customer money because they can go to that single source, like that time savings? Do you think it actually is good ROI for the clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different things that go into, the purchasing process for a new data set. Like if we're talking like specifically, let's use an example as like real-time data. If you spend the time to not only underwrite and vet a new data provider, that can take days, weeks, even months, to really narrow down on a few accurate providers of what you're looking for. But at the same time, like the integration process and with even testing new data sets can be very daunting and obviously very time consuming. And obviously developers time is can be quite expensive. And so there's a whole process that, before you even make a decision on purchasing a data set, that can obviously there can be costs associated with that. And so it's really important to understand, like, one, the providers you're working with and making sure that, not only from a, they make sense from a pricing side, but also, the quality of the service you're getting. There's, you can put yourself very easily in a position where you've integrated a data set with a provider on a trial, some type of a trial agreement, only to find out, down the road that not only one, that maybe that solution doesn't really work for what you're looking to accomplish, or the data quality isn't there, or the customer service isn't there, but you've already spent the money, time, and energy to integrate that data set. And so there's a lot of obstacles you really got to look at when you're looking at consuming another data set from a provider, because there's just so much back end costs that go with it when you're talking about actually integrating these data sets.
Yeah, it's the total cost of ownership isn't just licensing the data. It's the people you hire to test the data and the infrastructure and the server costs and on and on. and it can just kill you if you're going on a one-off hunt for data instead of talking to someone who's already got all that experience. What makes a good data partner? Like if you're looking to do BD, business development, find new partnerships and relationships, like the same thing, like some of that could be a wild goose chase for you, I'm sure. Like what is it about some partners that make them great to work with? And how could a company that like wants to get into BD and use that as a way to generate new business, like what kind of things should they be doing so that other companies want to work with them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a lot of different factors that go into play. I think the number one is the overall transparency that they provide to clients. A lot of the times, most of the times a client comes to us, a prospect comes to us, they want to get as much information up front as possible. They're obviously in discovery stage, so they want to, talk to a few different providers, see what they're about, see what's going on. They don't want to go through a ton of hoops in order to like actually get clarity on like one, what is the integration process looks like? Obviously, what is the pricing? And so it's really important from a data provider standpoint to really kind of focus in on wanting to win business and be aggressive and also transparent on their process. You'd be surprised how many players in the space out there really kind of try to, make it difficult for the, end user to really get all the information up front before making a decision on purchasing, a product. And so from our point of view, it's really about one, can you provide this information to our client in a timely manner, and making sure that they have all the information they need to making a purchasing decision for a product. Obviously, one things we really strive here at Intrinio is transparency and keeping everything open and allowing our clients to have access to as much information as possible before you making that purchasing decision. And so I think that's the biggest deciding factor for us is one, the capabilities of the data provider from that point of view. Customer service is a big factor too. And also the data quality. I mean, the one thing that can really hurt you within this space is from a reputation standpoint is if you actually, sell somebody a product and the data quality just really wasn't there from the get-go, it can be very detrimental to a firm. Not only from, maybe they're making investment decisions based off that information. If it's bad information, not only are you losing a ton of money in that decision if it goes the wrong way, but you just spent all this time, energy, and money. Back to my, comments on the integration side, it's you got to understand the product really before you dive full, head first into it. So that part can be really challenging and very daunting. And so that is another big factor that we always try to make sure that we're on the same page with another data provider is like, what kind of what's your trial process look like? Are you able to give access to your data to clients before they purchase? Obviously, depending on the data set, it's really tough, right? So it makes that process a little bit more customizable based off who's the provider and what data they're giving. But at the end of the day, it really all depends on one, customer service, data quality, and transparency.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because you're trying to connect those clients, save them time, save them money, and if the partner is super forthcoming about trial periods, cost, it's going to make that client's experience a lot easier. They actually don't waste a lot of time then up front evaluating if they should take a trial. Why do you think so many companies are hesitant to be transparent, to provide good customer service? Like I'm thinking about traditional vendors, like the big players in the space. Like why is their data confusing? Why is it hard to work with them? Like why would they obfuscate their pricing and make it hard to find? Like what's the benefit for them to doing that?
Yeah, it's funny because you think of some of the more traditional players in the space. It's still in that phase of we need NDAs, we need assurances that you're not going to take our information, right, steal it, or like go create a competing product. It's funny too because a lot of the times the tech decks there are just not anywhere near like some of the newer players in the space. Just from a delivery standpoint, I think it's just based off a more traditional model. If there's enterprise sales, and not having the understanding of like where the market is going and, how much access, becoming more readily available is access to data. So, it's an interesting question. I don't really have a definitive answer on that. I just think there's a lot of different things that go into it. One is just, I think they're just trying to hold on for dear life.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear. They're motivated by preventing bad things from happening rather than making good things happen. And that's hard to partner. It's hard to work. I mean, anybody, partner, client, whatever, that can be a real challenge because the data is so complicated and confusing to begin with. So it makes perfect sense to me.
And it's interesting too, because you have these situations where, if you rewind the tape a little bit, let's say it's, late 90s, early 2000s, the people who are actually working on, data projects that require data, a lot of the times it was, in those times you didn't have a lot of startups with, smaller budgets or, had access to the infrastructures in order to really compete with, larger institutions on developing these new, fintech products. If you think about, just the, access to more developer talent, for example, I mean, there's just, that has become such a high demand now. And there's so many more companies that need access to this information that are just not on the same level as your traditional financial institutions. And so that right there is, there's, a lot more companies out there that maybe not have the higher price point budget wise for the data. And so, from a legacy, from the, the traditional, bigger financial data providers, I think that's just kind of part of the whole game, right? Is not having the understanding of how some of these newer innovative companies work. They're more flexible in the sense like whether they're willing to move fast, they don't have the, the hierarchy for decision making, but it's, maybe they're at a lower price point than some of your, bigger financial institutions.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about your work life outside of business development. I mean, you're doing sales, you're managing your calendar, you're working remotely, you're on Zoom 24/7. How are you keeping yourself sane and managing email, calendar, all this, talking to clients and staying responsive, providing good customer service? I think everybody, no matter where they work, is probably overwhelmed by all of that. Like, how do you succeed? How do you keep yourself from being overwhelmed and stay focused on those clients and partnerships?
Oh man, how much time do you got? We could spend an hour on this segment alone. It's really interesting. I think when the pandemic hit and everybody was really, going fully remote, kind of hit everybody, kind of a shock period, like shock and awe period, where it was like everything just fully went to what is your like you're really just living off your calendar and, making sure that, you can structure yourself accordingly. Biggest thing I do is I try to be my own boss in a fact where it's like being disciplined on how, you keep your calendar and making sure you stick to your calendar. It's very easy to kind of go off going off the beaten path and just kind of, winging it every day. Obviously you're scheduling calls, making sure that, you're not just scheduling calls at will, but really structuring yourself in a way where you can not only do, have your, your schedule set up where you're taking all your calls, you're listening to, either BD calls, sales calls, whatever it may be, but also, setting time aside for work or other things that you really are passionate about, whether it's like meditating, even taking lunch. Obviously in the startup world, that can be a little difficult. But just even like putting it on your calendar, being like, hey, you need to do, this is busy work time or this is, sales call time, can be really important because, especially when you're talking about, working with a clientele that's international, you're constantly working with conflicting time zones. And so, when you're talking to people in the morning, that may be their afternoon, or your afternoon, they may be their morning. It could be really, you could very easily schedule yourself, right through lunch and into dinner. Right. So, self-discipline on that end is really important. I like to try to take as many, mental breaks as I can between calls, whether that's just digesting what's going on, or, taking notes and doing the proper due diligence follow-ups. So my strategy has been, ever since the pandemic kind of hit was trying not to do as many back-to-back calls as possible. That way it gives you time not only to be flexible on any if you run over or, just being able to reflect on the call. Because if you kind of bounce in between calls, it's really hard to digest what happened on a call or even do like your proper notes or follow-ups afterwards. So, I think just self-discipline and understanding that, if you live by your calendar, then, make sure you, kind of keep it as, disciplined as possible.
I love that. Yeah, I like that. It's almost like you have to force yourself not to work constantly because you're mistaking movement for action. So don't be constantly busy. Don't be constantly on calls because otherwise what's the point of the calls? There has to be some sort of follow-up from those meetings. And you have to block the time so that you can actually do it and then have the discipline to stick to it. So that's awesome. All right, last question. Do you think Top Gun's release is going to get pushed back again, or is it actually going to come out this fall?
Man, that's a good question. There's a running bet going on if I'm going to get married first or if this Top Gun 2 thing's going to come out. I don't know. It could be 2025, but by the time that thing comes out, we'll see. But I know that the recent update is now May 22nd, I think, for 2022, which is, I think, the same time a couple other movies. Yeah, a couple other movies are going to be coming out. So I think it's going to get pushed back even further. So who knows?
No, that's hard. I'm sure our listeners are suffering.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. It's been an ongoing thing now for over a year. So we'll see.
Bummer. Well, thanks so much for being here, Steele. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks, Andy.